It's time.
Hey guys, Wheat here, and today I am going to be doing a video on my UI, how you can make a nice lightweight Shadow Priest UI coming into Shadowlands. This is not just the Shadow Priest video, this is for any class, and these add-ons will work for everyone. So what I wanted to go through first was firstly how to install add-ons. Most people are using currently the Twitch app to control the add-ons. However, the Twitch app is going to be turned off very soon, and I believe the next best option is going to be an add-on called WoW. By installing these add-ons, you can go straight into the add-on, search for an add-on, and it will install it automatically for you, which makes it super easy. Back in the day, you had to actually download the file, copy it to your add-ons, and it was a little bit confusing, but luckily we have these add-on managers now, which is great. What I wanted to talk about first was the basics of my UI. Talking about my frames and how I set up my UI. So the first thing I want to talk about is my party frames. My party frames are the stock Blizzard UI. What I do is go into interface, raid profiles, and I have three separate raid profiles. I have a primary, which is for arena, a raid, which I use in raids because I want smaller buffs, and then RBGs, which is smaller to the side. And basically you will change this depending on whatever content you're doing. Now I have my primary set on a 2-player, 3-player, and 5-player because that will pretty much always be arena or a dungeon. And I like to check all the boxes. This will just make sure that everything is showing and that it's distinguishable. Then down the bottom, frame height. For arena, knowing what is happening to your team is super important. So having your frame height and your frame width at max is my recommendation at the very least. Now, what I want to talk about is the backbone of my UI, which is LeatrixPlus. LeatrixPlus in combined with eAlign. So that's /LTP and /align. Align is the grids that I use in the background to make sure that I can line up everything. And LTP is actually how I move my frames. So if you open /LTP and then go down to frames, you can see a little cogwheel here called manage frames. So with this, I can quickly and easily move my frames around, and with a line, I can make sure that it's in line and my OCD is not going crazy. You can also use this to move your buffs. So if you are a class playing with level 60 Shadow Priest, for example, and you want to be able to track when they have power infusion up on you, you can move your buffs in nice and close. I prefer to have them up there because I monitor it in other ways. I also, in LeatrixPlus, like to have the class icon portraits clicked. This is so that when I target a class, in its portrait, I can see what class it is. So when I'm quickly tabbing around, I know exactly what I am dotting. So that is the backbone of Leatrix. And again, to turn the grid off, all you have to do is /align. Next up, I want to talk about Arena Team Tracker. So Arena Team Tracker is what you see next to this party frame. But to open this, you'd simply do /ATT. What you want to make sure is that it's attached to raid frames, Blizzard only, and then it grows left or grows right, depending on where your bars are. What this will do is it'll tell me what my teammates' cooldowns are used, when they're used, and the cooldown left. So if he walls, I know that he's walled and that I don't have to use my life swap or my grip. It's very, very good for rotating cooldowns, especially in the current meta when no one is using voice clips. Discord. Next up, Bagnon. I love Bagnon just so I can quickly and easily see everything. I'm generally a person who doesn't like to have water on their bars. It just takes up space, but I know it's going to be right here. Bagnon will open up your bag straight away. It's also very good for alts and stuff because if I hover over here, I can see what gold I have on alts, and if I hover over an item, I can see what item I have on other characters, which is really good, especially for things like Mark of Honor, where you need to trade them in for tokens to roll on things. Then bars. So down here, I use bartender 4. To open it is /bartender. I can unlock it. I can move everything around. I can also change the scale on it. I can also hide things and still have the bar work. And you can also remove Blizzard art and stuff like that using bartender. So it's a nice lightweight add-on. The best part about bartender is the key bindings mode. Now Blizzard does have this in their UI now, so you don't actually need bartender. But what bartender will allow you to do is it'll allow you to hover over a spell. You could either hit escape to clear the spell, and then you just simply have to hit the button, move to the next one, and do all your keybinds. It's a great way to do it because I know a lot of people don't have keybinds because they just can't be bothered setting them up. And this is a really simple way to do it. Next thing I want to talk about is Bigdebuffs. So Bigdebuffs is this add-on. So the one that's also in the portrait. So when an enemy is taking CC, what it will do is it'll show that CC in the portrait. This is how I make sure that I do not overlap with my teammates when they're CCing. And it's crucial. You need to be able to track CCs on your enemies. And yeah, there's not much to that. Track your enemies CC so that you don't overlap. Then classic numbers. So I have these numbers hidden for the most part. If you can see over here, I have quite a few filters on this. So I have numbers truncated. So if there's a big hit, it'll make it smaller. I have the size and the opacity reduced because it's just not that important to me as a Shadow Priest. However, this add-on brings back numbers to how they were when the game was first released, when I first started. And if you like seeing numbers on your screen, it's actually really nice because they come out nice and bold and yeah. Next up is combat tracker. So if you look up here, it says leaving combat. This basically tells me when I'm in and out of combat. I use this to make sure that I don't get sapped by rogues. And I also use it when I'm healing to make sure that I can drink. And it's just a good way to track your combat because looking down to see if your mount is highlighted is not very efficient. Then DBM. So DBM is basically required. There's PvP countdown timers, but in the current day and age, you kind of have to be doing PvE at some point. So you do want to make sure that you have DBM just so you can see when bosses are doing things, when you need to move out of stuff, because it's so hard to play the game without PvE gear. You want to be half decent at PvE. Next thing I want to talk about is details. So details is my damage meter down here. In PvP, my main uses for details are essentially seeing how I compare with enemy Shadow Priests. If I look down at details and see that I'm behind, I realize that I've done something wrong and that I need to be improving on that. Comparing against other classes is usually not a good idea because as a Shadow Priest, you should always be the top. Along with warlocks. Even if you're not doing the most effective damage, you should be highest on the damage meter. Having a higher damage than another priest will generally mean that you're faking more kicks, that you're keeping your dots up more, and that you're just generally playing better. Now, the most important thing I use details for is deaths, first of all. I check out how I died. I see a little recap. I see what I could have done better, but also interrupts. Tracking interrupts is a really good way to make sure that you're optimizing the way that you use your interrupts. Okay, if you have, for example, a Death Knight who has a 15-second kick and the game was 3 minutes long and he had one kick, then what happened? Did you miss every kick or did you just not use it? And that sounds toxic, so I'll use the example of myself. I have a 45-second silence. If the game goes for 5 minutes and I've only silenced once, what am I doing? Okay, so tracking interrupts is very important, making sure that you're maximizing, and not that you're just using it on cooldown, but you're actually kicking things that are effective. Next up, I will talk about Gladius. So Gladius is what I use to track enemies' DRs. So in PvP, like in a duel, in Battlegrounds, I don't care about tracking DRs. It's not that important to me. However, in Arena, it's super important. Knowing when thing is coming off Fear DR, when it's coming off Polymorph DR, when they've used their Trinket, when they've used their Dispel, all super important. Along with that, you can right click on the bar to set quick focus, and also you can see their cast bar. So using Gladius to its full potential is my biggest recommendation. It is by far the most crucial PvP add-on to have. Next up is Omnibar. So I have 2 Omnibars set up, and I know this looks a little bit crazy, but the buffs never get this big. The top bar for me is Omnibar for kicks. So I track my kicks nice and big up here, and then down the below, I will track things that are a little bit less important, but still important. I don't track things that aren't important. I do track important buffs that I don't need to know instantly down here. I use this to keep a track on when their next go is going to happen, when they're about to pop their cooldowns, and when I need to have defensives and save them for. Omnibar is one of those ones that you really can't play without. I recommend having 2 bars, one for interrupts and one for spells, and having them separate. If you're a healer, you definitely need to have a second Omnibar set up, because looking down and seeing a whole group of buffs and trying to fish out the kick is super hard. Next up, WeakAuras. So my WeakAuras will be around here. I have a set of WeakAuras that pop up. So the first one is a Devouring Plague WeakAura that will tell me my insanity status. So I know when I get to 100, I'm capped. It's big time to burst. That pops up. I also have a Shadow of Death one that will pop up when someone is below 20%. But these target dummies will not go below 20%, so I can't really show you that. I also have a Cloak proc, which will be going away. And also I have the cooldown tracked for my Void Bolt, because I don't want to be looking down at my bars, and I only have that 15-second window. So having WeakAuras in the middle of your screen will allow you to track. I don't like a lot of these WeakAuras that people use where they have their entire spell book around their character. I feel like it makes things a little bit too cluttered, and I'm not a big fan of that. So I'll actually go into my WeakAuras real quick, and I have a WeakAuras database on WeakAuras website, which I will put in the comments below. But interestingly, my favorite is this Devouring Plague. What this is when an enemy Shadow Priest uses Devouring Plague, this will pop up, and that's when I know to purify disease. So for me right now, outplaying other Shadow Priests is my main goal. So I always keep track of Devouring Plagues and dispel it as much as possible. This is my Shadow of Death WeakAura that will pop up when someone is below 20%, and I know it is time to Shadow of Death. Apart from that, Dispersion. So when I use Dispersion, it will track how long it is up for. I also have a cancel Dispersion aura in my Mind Blast. I don't recommend having one on your Dispersion, because if you do that, you could disperse and then cancel it instantly by accident when you're spamming it. I also use these little wavy lines to track any trinket procs when I do have a trinket proc. Cool. So that is WeakAuras, and the last thing I want to talk about is Doom Cooldown Pulse. So Doom Cooldown Pulse is the add-on that pops up in the middle of my screen. It's, for me, quite subconscious. It might actually not be working in this content, but what it does is when a spell comes off cooldown, it pops up very light in the middle of my screen. So I have the opacity set to like 10%. But what it allows me to do is subconsciously see that a spell has come off cooldown, and I don't need to think about it too much in foreground. I think it's just over time I've got used to that, and it works really well for me, and it just keeps things a little less cluttered. In terms of your UI, you do not want to have anything that's too bulky that's going to weigh down your UI, first of all. The second thing you want to make sure is that you are not being too cluttered, that you can actually see what is happening, and that your gameplay is improved and not affected by UIs. And the last thing that I want to tell you, and I've been a victim of this before, is don't copy someone's UI 100% like you're copying a test. Okay, if you change your UI completely, chances are you're not going to play with it very well. What you should do is take adaptations from someone's UI and then move it into a format that you are comfortable with. So you might not take my action bars being here or having my raid frames here, because if your raid frames are normally over here up in the top left, then whenever something happens, you're going to look up to the top left. You're going to waste time coming back to that center point. So definitely stick to how you normally have your UI, but incorporate the add-ons in a way that's comfortable for you. So I think that just about sums up my UI video. Keep it nice and lightweight, and if you have any questions, please drop them.